For a big majority of you watching this video, you may have stumbled across a childhood game that has resonated with your enjoyment for entertaining activities, some of which connect with you for the rest of your life. For me, that game has always been Geometry Dash, the game that should have died years ago, that miraculously hasn't. Instead, has rapidly become one of the most well-received video games in the 21st century. In this video, we will look into Geometry Dash's growth into becoming one of history's most beloved games. I hope you all enjoy. It was roughly 11 years ago when the developer, RobTop, launched Geometry Dash for the world to see, and prior to his most successful creation, there had already been a game similar to what he had made, called The Impossible Game, except this one had far more to give, and had way better graphics. However, the game performed very poorly for the first few months, until it suddenly had an exploding return, by it being shared amongst many people around the world. Nowhere near as today's numbers, but was still impressive nonetheless. But one of the main reasons why Geometry Dash maintained its consistency of rising players was because of the level editor, which allowed players to upload their own creations for anyone that wanted to experience new gameplay. Aside from the main levels, not only was it for gameplay, but for art as well. And with players wanting to play harder and more decorative levels, it created the one thing that brought everyone together: a community. The Geometry Dash community has one of the greatest reputations compared to all other successful games. Although it isn't the largest, it definitely is a very respectful and welcoming community. From the countless collaborations to the cheering of someone beating the hardest levels, the community has come a long way over the last decade, which has carried this game's legacy to where it stands today. But what exactly did the community do? Well, we have to break it down similarly to my best players in every GD category video, from 4 different categories to building levels, top play, star grinding, and speedrunning. But before we can mention anything about these 4 categories, we need to talk about the developer, RobTop, who was responsible for updating Geometry Dash and allowing players to create and experiment new mechanics. During the early ages of the game's history, RobTop was actually frequently updating Geometry Dash, up until the 1.9 update, where updates would almost occur yearly, until the longest waiting time for the 2.2 update, which lasted almost 7 years. And with an update hiatus being that long, everyone would picture that as Geometry Dash's downfall. However, the opposite occurred. During the near 7 years of update inactivity, the Geometry Dash community managed to push through the game's capability of what was thought to be limited, meaning players created things that were not meant to be implemented. Examples such as animations, 3D effects, and even recreations of other video games. Not only was it about creating levels, but pushing the difficulty threshold, as when players figured out that higher refresh rates were required to boost your performance, it kicked the game's popularity to new heights that pretty much no other video game has ever done, without the need of any updates to keep the Geometry Dash community intact, in which it is considered to be one of the hardest games in the world. But just to mention, there are way easier levels to try if you aren't interested in top play. To see a game's own community making waves on anything that revolves around numbers is absolutely crazy, and I believe now is the time that I can mention about the 4 different categories that transformed the game during the last few years. So, let's start off with building levels. Building levels was one of the key elements that made the game stand out amongst all other video games, as some of the best Geometry Dash levels today consist of things that have never been seen before, or just look absolutely beautiful. And with showcases being viewed by tens of millions of people every day, it has brought the attention to give first-timers a great introduction as to how great Geometry Dash is. Now, regarding top play, this one is absolutely major. Every couple months or every year, there will be a new hardest level ever verified, A great example is one of the most iconic top ones, Slaughterhouse. Most popular streamers or YouTubers think of this level when thinking about Geometry Dash alone. But as I mentioned before, it is because the community has never seen gameplay or a level this intense before. So it sparked tons of curiosity and brought tons of eyes towards the level, which again, definitely brought tons of new players to try the game out. It isn't only about the top 1 hardest levels though. It could be any hard level that is unique in its own way. But without mentioning any difficult levels, we can mention the star grinding players, which consist of people that have dedicated their time to play the highest amount of rated levels to boost their stats to the top. And with the game having more than 44,000 rated levels, you can imagine the great lengths that these players go through to be number 1. And with many players fighting their way to be at that milestone, it's bound to fluctuate in the near future. But there is one more thing to mention: the players that want to beat levels or achieve things at the fastest time, speedrunning, in which is a fairly newer category that can pretty much be done on almost anything in Geometry Dash. The most popular speedruns have to do with the built-in timer on all platformer levels, but this was after the release of the 2.2 update, which isn't really relevant when it comes to the 7-year of update inactivity, but was major directly after. So with these 4 categories mixed together, we can paint a picture as to how many different varieties of activities that you can do in Geometry Dash. But in the case that anything that I mentioned did not interest any non-GD player to give the game a try, let me explain another crucial alternative: the many downloadable mods and new interacting methods of gameplay, Geode. The Geometry Dash community has made a few alternative methods of playing the game, which consist of mods such as no-clipping, unlimited editor modifications, and more, which is normally used by a modding tool named MegaHack. But one of the most prestigious assets that is public for the community is Geode, which is a newer modding tool that diversifies smaller but more primitive mods and resources to better your performance, enjoyment, and understanding of all levels. And one of the biggest upsides to Geode is its multiplayer, as players can race to beat a level and collectively build at the same time. There are plenty more add-ons and movements that made the game more appealing, but I wanted to break down a couple major ones. It's unfathomable to think about just how much the Geometry Dash community has done without the need of RobTop and its 2.2 update, but it didn't mean that it would have lasted forever. Eventually, it needed to be updated, and on December 19th of 2023, the Geometry Dash 2.2 update came to fruition, which launched the biggest spike of new players, including returning ones. This update added an unbelievable amount of triggers, new decorations, the platformer mode, a new game mode, a new main level, and so much more. And honestly, I think if we waited another 7 years for the 2.3 update, we would still be kicking the game to newer heights, similar to the prior 2.2 hiatus. It's just honestly crazy to think about it. But despite all the great things this game has given to us, it doesn't make it perfect in any way, as there are many controversies that can become hectic, and some even ridiculous, which is what we're going to talk about now. There have been countless times where certain controversies had resulted in a feud, or escalated to even more serious actions, most of which were not warranted by any means. Certain examples of ridiculous Geometry Dash dramas are as follows. The pausing feature should not be allowed when verifying a level, which goes after Paco's verification of the 3rd hardest level, Silent Clubstep, which is just completely stupid. Another one revolves around the discovery of a slightly easier path on the 2nd hardest level, Acheron, which basically means the community started a war for the criminality of a single extra click. I am not joking. YouTuber Troy PM has a great video discussing the drama, so I highly recommend checking out Troy's video after. Anyways, Geometry Dash is no stranger to having arguments over minuscule opinions, which in some ways loses the game's credibility of being considered great, or the best as I believe. However, it doesn't mean that all controversies should not be acknowledged. There have been times where certain individuals get called out or exposed for criminal or disgusting acts, as well as other gaming communities, in which I believe the best way to enjoy the game is to exclusively focus on what you love to do, and to just get away from Twitter. But there is one more thing I really want to include in this video, and that is to talk about what lies ahead for the game and its community, the future of Geometry Dash. This game has undergone many ups and downs over the last decade, but after all this time, the community continues to grow. Things have decreased or have been performing less for others, but Geometry Dash is special in its own way, because over time, the thought of the game having limited capabilities always seems to push ahead to newer and more unique events, which allows more creative and innovative ways for players to rather suggest ideas or create their own imaginations using mods, and it is safe to assume that it will stay that way for the future. There is no indication of the game slowing down in the next few years, and honestly, I'm pretty excited to see how much will change for the better, with Geometry Dash being affiliated with Newgrounds, NCS, a few music artists, and potentially with LEGO, as a user named Easy Gappy created a Geometry Dash LEGO set and published it on the official LEGO Ideas website, which currently has more than 9,000 supporters on the potential project. And if it were to reach 10,000 supporters, it would be taken into consideration. So if you want to show your support, I will leave a link in the description. I should also mention that the title for the hardest level is bound to fluctuate in the next few years. I have already made a video discussing it before, but it ties perfectly for what is to be expected for the game's future. Content creators will continue to grow with newer ones letting their names be known, and for the most part, the fate of Geometry Dash's success is in the community's hands. The things I mentioned in this video are a majority of the key elements that make this game so great, but there are many different aspects to it that I have not covered, like the Geometry Dash Awards, or community-wide events, such as the NCS Gauntlet Contest. But I believe that everyone watching this video should at least have an interest in potentially playing or giving Geometry Dash a try, just to experience the game in its full glory, because it is honestly fascinating to see how much the community evolves, and to see everyone's personal happiness while achieving something special for themselves. So, let me know in the comments below on what your thoughts on the game are, and anything else you want to include that I have not already mentioned. But let's just hope that this video will not age well through time, because that would be a little embarrassing. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and thank you so much for 24,000 subscribers. I am very happy to see this channel grow, and I couldn't have done it without all of your support. I also want to thank the channel members as well. Thank you all for watching, and Quasi Hemi Demi Semi Quaver.